Hello, welcome to my channel. I'm Janet Yong, and in my channel I share about Feng Shui, Bazi, entrepreneurship as well as personal growth in the areas of communication, motivation and success. In today's episode, it's a follow-up of last week's episode where I shared with you how we can basically understand our personal profile and orientation in order to drive an additional side gig or side stream. And in this episode itself, I'll be utilizing my own chart as an example of how I understood my Bazi chart, understood my strengths, my orientation, as well as in each of the individual luck cycle itself, what I did once I have the insight in order to pick up the right kind of skill sets, maximize the opportunities that's available in the luck cycle. So if you're interested in Bazi and Feng Shui in more detail, I've actually just launched also my YouTube channel membership because a lot of people have written to me to ask me to run courses, and I've decided to do it on the YouTube channel membership itself. I've included the link in the video description. If you are keen to join my membership circle, please click on the link and join me in the inner circle. So without further ado, let's move on to the next segment. As usual, please remember to download your Bazi chart from bazicalculator.janetyong.com or scan the QR code as shown in this particular slide. So for today's chart, I'm going to use my chart as an example. I'm born on the day of Yin Fire and born in the month of summer. So you can see that in the red rectangle, my profile is that of leader, which basically is the people orientation. So Ting Fire is really about making a difference to people, influencing people. If you remember in some of the other episodes on the Day Master itself, Ting Fire, it's good at influencing, making a difference, moving people towards a particular direction. That's why I've been actually in this Chinese metaphysics as a consultant for some time, because it's motivating me, because I feel that I can make a difference. Now the leader profile, it's about connecting with people as well as working with a group of people, which is also very similar to Ting Fire, but you have to basically work with people, and that's where I am in my consultation business as well. If you look at what kind of income generation the rock wealth or leader profile can do in terms of people orientation, I can be in deal making, collaboration with people, referral, influencer, networking, marketing or sales. What I'll do right now is show an example of what I've done since my 20s after graduating from university. So in this particular example, you can see my chart. As a leader profile, it is interesting. When I was young, I originally wanted to do commerce, thinking that I wanted to become an accountant. However, when I had exposure in my teens in junior college to study the commerce section where I did both accounting as well as marketing, immediately I realized that I am not interested in trying to balance numbers. I will have a huge headache trying to find differences in accounting, doing the debiting, crediting. So for sure at that point in time, I knew that it's definitely not accounting. I have definitely got to move into marketing and work with people. After I graduated, although I was interested in FMCG type of marketing, I knew in order for me to be able to do well in marketing, I had to start off from sales. And at that point in time, I graduated in 91. It's quite interesting. If you look at the luck cycle of 22, I was in the diplomat as well as director profile. If you remember, I mentioned in the previous episodes, diplomat is really about concentrating in career for a woman. For this example, I'm going to just focus on career development. In the 20s, at the beginning, in the first 5 years, it was really about gaining fame, gaining recognition, climbing corporate ladder. And because diplomat is a process-oriented profile, so I have to follow the footsteps that is defined by my company in order to basically pick up the skill sets. Now then, in 1992, I joined the company that I worked for many years, which is Johnson & Johnson, and in there I basically picked up selling skill sets, which is something that I still enjoy doing till today in terms of influencing and working with people. Then in the second half of that 22-year-old luck cycle was the director profile. If you remember, director profile is action oriented. So it's about hitting goals, hitting targets, achieving set milestones. So I did very well in the corporate luck cycle at this point in time because I was focusing and following rules and regulation, and at the same time because I have the director profile influence, so I picked up the skill sets of how to sell, how to hit targets, how to work within a time frame and implement things well. So in the year 1999, which was the last year before it went on to the next luck cycle of the 32-year-old luck cycle, so you will notice that in 1999, it was the year of the rabbit. And in my next luck cycle of 32, it was that of the rooster. Now the rabbit and the rooster clash. So it means there were some changes in my external environment. And therefore, I changed in terms of a bit of my mindset. And it's really true because then what happened was, personally, I got pregnant, I delivered my baby in the year 2000, okay? And because of that, my mindset changed a little as well. In the first 5 years of the 32-year-old luck cycle, it was the warrior profile. And at that point in time, I was not really so keen anymore in terms of really going out, traveling in the region, but more of expanding my different types of roles and responsibilities. So I actually developed skill sets not just in the sales and marketing department. At that point in time, I also became a management committee member. Then I handled medical affairs regulations because I was in the medical affairs, and at that time in Singapore, it was just starting out. And basically went across the same level but managing multiple different projects. That's what a warrior profile basically entails. So if you do not reject the obstacles that come, why did I say obstacles? Of course, since I've always been in sales and marketing, trying out in other forms would usually entail something that you do not know, and you have to bite the bullet and just move forward. And at the same time, I was also a mom. So trying to balance so many different kinds of roles, internally, externally, wasn't easy, which led to the next bit, which is the rooster element that came into influence. Because if you remember the pioneer profile, it's really that of taking risks, stepping out of your comfort zone and trying something else. So in the year 2004, right, I quit my job mainly because I was working too hard, traveling too much, and couldn't find work-life balance. I needed to take 2 years off break in order for me to find that balance. And I promised to go back to corporate to my boss at that point in time. However, I was also curious why I was becoming very emotionally unstable. I wasn't sure whether it was because I took on too much responsibilities becoming a new mom, or because I shifted into a new place. So I decided to then venture and study feng shui. So that was my first foray in feng shui in the year 2004. And if you don't have the pioneer profile influence at times, you may not necessarily be willing to take that risk to quit your job and try something new. So that's what it generally means, because originally from young, I've never thought that I'll start my own business. When I learned feng shui itself, because the first master that I learned from advocate placement of items, I came from a medical background, which basically have to prove with clinical papers for every new technology. So when the master advocated, you place a certain item, you have love, you place a certain item, you have career. I was like, oh, does this really work? So with the pioneer profile influence in me, and also because of my sales background, I decided to start up a kiosk in a shopping mall to test out this entire concept. And that's how I started in feng shui and became a Bazi consultant, and I didn't look back. For the next 5 years, from 2004 all the way to 2009, I was really focusing more on expanding my retail business, expanding my consultation business itself. Then when I went to the next luck cycle, which is basically the 42-year-old luck cycle, If you can see, it is really the analyzer influence at the beginning and the hurting officer or performer influence afterwards. In the year 2009, I basically had the opportunity to open an outlet. However, because of the pickup in my consultation business, I was not able to manage. And when I moved on to the new Lux cycle, which was that of an analyzer, it is more about taking a step back, understanding, going to deeper study. So therefore, I was not so keen in running the operations anymore. And I then approached my then supplier to see whether they would take over my retail operations while I just managed the brand It Treasures itself. So for the next few years, starting from 2010, I was basically studying, learning more into feng shui, and especially when the idea was broached to me about comparing Western profiling system, which is used amongst Western corporations, versus that of Asian, which is the Bazi system itself. I became quite interested and started doing a little bit more research, which is what the analyzer profile is really all about, right? Then, if you can see further down in the 42-year-old Lux cycle, I had a performer profile influence, which is really about branding, about coming out with your ideas. So if you remember last week's episode, I talked about if your idea orientation, you need to start creating your products, your IP, maybe write a book. And that's how in 2010, I started to do more research. And in the year 2012, I basically published my first book with thanks to Joe Yap Publishing, or Research Sendiri Berhad, that published my first book, Being Happy and Successful in Work and in Your Career. And following up in 2015, I basically published two books. One, the Being Happy and Successful series, Managing Yourself and Others. Then after that, an ebook on the entrepreneur in you. Then in the year 2018, I followed up with the second edition, because in between I basically collected data, had the Pulse mobile app, and redid an edition for both the book 2 of Being Happy and Successful in terms of managing yourself, including the Pulse mobile app and the data that I collected on positive results for self-awareness, as well as the second edition of the Entrepreneur in You. Now, in the meantime, I was also learning and took up a lot of lessons and started to basically interview people for my latest book. Why did I do that? Let me show you in the next chart. If you can see, in the 6th Lux cycle, there was a clash of the 52-year-old Lux cycle of the pig with my snake month branch. Now, it is the same for everyone. If you remember, everyone at the 6th Lux cycle, usually there will be a clash, and this clash can mean a change in our thinking, because the month governs our thinking. In the olden days, 50s would be maybe the retirement age, and we start to think about what it is. And if you're looking at health, in China, long time ago, people seldom pass the 60th Lux cycle because the health will deteriorate. But in today's world, because of advances in medical sciences, our lifespan actually extends a lot longer. However, maybe the quality of life may not be there, especially if you do not take care of your health. Now today, we're basically just going to focus on career and personal growth, so I'm not going to touch so much about health. But if I were to look at it, in the previous Lux cycle, if we have an insight, I already knew that there will be some changes coming up, especially in 2019 and 2020. So what can I do to prepare myself? I studied what was in the Lux cycle itself, and that is what helped me understand and prepare myself in this new wave, especially in COVID-19. If you remember when I shared in clashes in one of the earlier episodes, if there is a clash in your month pillar, usually it basically involves a change in your thinking. It also involves a change. If you are working for someone, maybe you either change company, change bosses, or change department. However, I'm in my own business, so I was wondering to myself, in other words, month represents my client. If there was a clash, then there could be a change of my clientele. But I did not know what kind of change it would be. In order for me to understand a little bit more, I then look into my chart for more guidance. So you can see that the first 5 years of the 52-year-old luck cycle was that of the philosopher, which is a analysis-oriented profile, which basically looks at bigger trends and learning from other people. The second half of it is really about the diplomat gaining recognition, maybe going into corporate. In my mind, therefore, I know that in the next luck cycle, there could be a few possibilities. One is I'll be learning from other people, looking at bigger trends. Two is I could go back to corporate, or I will be working with more corporate clients, or I may be gaining more brand recognition. What I did was from 2017 onwards, I decided to open up different pathways because I wasn't sure which one will come. What I'm sharing here basically is if we know that there are changes going to come, you have to prepare yourself a couple of years beforehand. Do not wait for the change to come and then just be like a sitting duck and say, oops, what am I going to do now? When you already saw some of these things coming. So starting from the year 2017, I knew that period 9, which will start in 2024, online learning will become very important. And that because of the shift of our business from face-to-face store traffic, we are moving a lot to online. I decided to pick up digital marketing, data analytics. So that's one way to move online. Another was because one of the paths was that I might be going back into corporate, doing a little bit more training because of the books that I publish. Therefore, I went to take up facilitation course, curriculum development course. At the same time, because the curriculum development course was really about leadership and development, I then wanted to understand more what's the latest in thing in leadership. And during that period of time, starting in 2018, I then decided to interview with my co-author 100 leaders across 17 countries in Asia to come up with the book Effective Asian Leadership. So that's how I basically prepared myself for the next luck cycle. And in the curriculum development course, because e-learning was up and coming, so I managed to pick up the skill sets of how to create an online course during the curriculum development course. And when 2020 happened, that was the changeover into my new luck cycle, and COVID-19 hit. I then was actually quite comfortable in going online. Although live stream was something new to me, I decided that it's something that I need to pick up in the longer term anyway, because that's the way the whole energy will go. So I learned to do live stream, I learned to do video recording, and at the end of 2020 I decided to do more YouTube videos because I've already done my digital marketing in terms of SEO and SMM, and we're already doing ads. And the next thing I can basically pick up the skill set on in terms of online learning is being comfortable in front of the camera, while at the same time, of course, promoting some of my online products. And now I'm also moving on to online courses, and true enough, because I'm actually picking up the skill set and following and maximize the opportunities that are coming, I am basically getting more known online, and I was really surprised to cross more than 10,000 subscribers during Chinese New Year this year. So this is what I have basically utilized my Bazi chart in terms of helping me. Well, does it mean that I did not meet with obstacles? No, of course there are obstacles all along the way, but obstacles, like I mentioned previously, they are basically critical milestones where we are supposed to learn from our mistakes, because only through failures, reflecting on them, can we learn, and therefore we can move forward and better into the future. So long as I know, number one, I am still interacting with people, influencing people, because that's following my Day Master of Yin Fire, as well as working with people because I'm a leader profile. But I will go according to the luck cycle, pick up the necessary skill sets at that point in time, but following back towards who I want to be, what I want to be in terms of personality, and then again looking back at our values, who I am, what I stand for. Once I have all that aligned, even I meet with obstacles and challenges, I will still move ahead. So I hope that you have enjoyed this particular video and learn from what I have shared. And if you would like to really understand more about reading your own Bazi chart, what the terms and how do you prepare for yourself, do consider joining my membership circle. I have the link in the video description as I mentioned earlier on. Thank you for taking time to watch this video with me. Till next week, goodbye.